So to kick off the social games track this year, I've asked Matt Hulett from Gamehouse to come in and talk about how do you manage your company through change? How do you embrace change? How do you make change work for you? And with that, let me turn this over to Matt Hulett, Senior Vice President for Gamehouse. Matt?
Today is the 42nd anniversary of the famous Apollo 11 mission, the first man on the moon. We really exemplified the best of what this country is all about. A big direction set by John F. Kennedy, a great team putting together tons of millions of thousands of little details to get our guys on the moon. Not only a big opportunity for Neil Armstrong and his crew, but for the country. I felt what a great way to exemplify the tenets of what I'm going to be talking about today. So for those of you that get itchy bottoms and want to get going, I don't know why you'd have an itchy bottom, but you want to leave early, you're going to miss out on the best giveaway ever. Not quite Oprah good, but very good. Okay? I will guarantee that. So I'll be talking about today 3 tenets for addressing change in an industry that is all about change. Let's define first what the landscape looks like today. So the casual game space, as we all know, has been around for over 10 years. It's about $500 million in size. But social and mobile came around 3 to 4 years ago, and it already eclipses our traditional space by 3 to 4 times. 3 to 4 times. And I sit back and go, yeah, I would have predicted the smartphones would have been the next new age kind of console, but I think everyone was surprised by it. We're in an ocean of change, and how we decide to deal with it is scary at times. So what are the industry fears? If you've been through any of the panels today, you've heard things like, how do you change your business from a traditional download business to social and mobile? What do you pick, social or mobile? How do you build games as a service? How do you deal with all the APIs that are changing, the business models, and the new credit implementations like Facebook credits? There's thousands of things I've heard over the course of the last 2 days that sound like fear to me. So why the hell am I presenting? Well, I do have a day job, but over the last 20 years, I've basically been a change maker. I've been a change maker both for startups, either taking something that's very small and getting it large, or I've been in another opportunity to take something that's existing and try to change it. And so what I'm hoping to do for this 25-minute presentation is to really give you 3 pieces of advice for your team, your business, and yourself. So first off, why not show the biggest examples of the white-hot brands, Twitter, Groupon, and Facebook? Why not? Now, they have the easiest job because they didn't have an existing business. But what they do all have in common is whatever they implemented and how they implemented it wasn't first. They were fast, and they took advantage of new platforms like social and mobile that really, really, really accelerated their businesses. So let's take a look at some of these. I remember some of these quotes way back when I first looked at Twitter. It was like 140 characters. That's a social networking play. That's stupid. Well, we know how that turned out. No one could have predicted that. I don't think they could have. I don't think how many people are Twitter investors here. Group buying, that's a stupid idea. That's been tried before. Back in the Web 1.0 days, there was companies like Mercata. There was companies that raised tons of venture capital money to go after small businesses. Small businesses, venture capital, you're never going to get funded. What a stupid idea. Well, we knew how that turned out. Groupon basically decided to take email and viral channels and build lots and lots of scale to basically give offers to small businesses that didn't know how to do e-commerce. And they're doing quite nicely on the top line. Social networking, MySpace is already the leader. You got to be kidding me. Well, we know how that turned out. And these numbers, you can't even keep up with that, how fast Facebook is growing. And we know how the other guys turned out. Sorry, former MySpace employees. So I show these examples to kind of set us up for what I want to talk about. There's 3 things I think everyone should really consider when they're getting their business, their team, or your sales ready for change. Fear is the mind killer. People, process, and execution, and start with the end in mind. So let's first start with the fear is the mind killer. Any Dune fans in here? Anyone read Dune? At games conference? No one's raising their hand? No. I'm shocked. What's this world coming to? Well, there's this concept in Dune called fear is the mind killer. The Bene Gesserit priestesses talked about that, not to geek out. And what I always thought was interesting as a kid was that the inside battle in your brain is sometimes worse than the external battle. And we've all seen very personal experiences or public experiences like that when, for example, a sports hero chokes. It's not that they don't know what to do. They have the muscle memory. They know how to do what they're going to do. They've been practicing all their lives. But for some reason, something in their brain makes them stop and doubt themselves. And I think one of the things that I've seen before, even in companies that are really, really, really solid and know how to operate their way out of a brown paper bag, is once you do the business planning, you do the analytics, you launch a great game, whatever it is, everything you've done is exactly what you thought you should do, going after a big market opportunity. You understand your customers, but for some reason, you just choke. And the example I want to show is one of Pandora. And this is an interesting example because this company basically was stated very publicly by their CEO, we may not be around. They started out in 2006 as the Music Genome Project. We know the history. But right in the middle of their rapid growth, a little thing called music rights and the government got involved. And they didn't look like they were going to make it. And so we now know them as NASDAQ ticker symbol P and a $2 billion plus market cap. They refused to give in to the fear. They knew digital music was going to be big. And they chose not to listen to anyone and executed through it. So you can't be in a games conference without an Angry Birds reference. And has anyone ever seen Bull Durham? You've heard Crash Davis. He does this famous line where he teaches the younger pitcher that baseball's a simple game. You throw the ball, you catch the ball, you hit the ball. And of course, everything looks easy on a spreadsheet when you apply that to, this business model should work. All the kind of numbers work. It's just a very simple game. It's easy to say, hard to do in business. And I would say that the example of Rovio is very interesting, and I'll get into that in a second. A personal example is a startup that I'm chairman of right now, a former CEO of, that started out as an eBay seller tool business. Great team, great product, no one wanted it. Right? The customers were equivalent to the people in banks eating your donuts and free coffee all day. And no one wanted the darn product. And so instead of a woe is me moment, it was almost like this situation where you had the best team in the world that could build this great product. What do you do? So that product today actually will, I'm not going to predict too much on the stage, but I guarantee we'll have a great exit in the next 4 to 5 weeks. And that company now is an online analytics company. Same people, same development process, different outcome. And I think the hardest thing to do, and you can look at Hewlett-Packard in the days or whatever you want to do, the people starting the business generally don't actually build what they started to do. They go on a journey, and the journey pivots, and it goes left and right. And you don't know where it's going to go, but without that proper team framework up front at the right times, you won't be able to get to the next phase. And that process piece constantly has to move and gel. And you have to adapt as you get to different sizes of your business. If it was a small business, you have to do something completely different when you're at a large business. And then you have to execute. And I bring up Rovio because they were former partners of ours at Gamehouse, and they did 30-plus titles, all of whom were not hits. And they did a lot of job shop work, a lot of work for hire work. They actually had a big layoff. We hired some of their folks. And as the CEO and I were talking recently, he said, yeah, it was just an overnight success, 30-plus failures, and they just happened to make one overnight that worked. Did the people change? No. Did the process change to development? No, it did not. What changed was they stayed focused on what they wanted to do, and they happened to build the right game for the right platform at the right time, taking advantage of a game mechanic and a new platform, and certainly promotion from Apple because of that, and hit it right at the spot. And now we know Angry Birds to be a phenom in its own right. And so why in the hell am I showing Abe Lincoln? He's the original badass. He is. This guy is the biggest failure you've ever seen, except he had 30 years of failures and just happened to have one success. And you can forget what I said in points 1 and point 2. You can completely forget them, but do not forget this point. I know so many people that have had failure after failure after failure, and they happen to have huge exits. And we all know those stories. We may know people personally. But if you truly believe in something, you have to start with the end in mind. And one exercise that I like to do is start with a press release in my head of where I want my business, myself, whatever it is, in 2 years. I write that press release, and then I work back from it. If you don't know where you want to go, then you're not going to go anywhere. So let's just talk about Abe for a second. I love this slide. I mean, the guy's sweetheart dies. He has a nervous breakdown, and he never gets elected. And finally, after 30 plus years, in 1860, he's elected president. He becomes one of the, I would argue that one of the most effective presidents of our time. If you don't start with the end in mind, you won't figure out a path to get there, and never let go of it. So I do work for Gamehouse, so I will start talking about my business, because I think that there are some things that I've applied over the years I'm applying to this business. And first off, I started the business. I've had this job for about a year running the games group. And we are a business that's been around for 10 years. We actually revolutionized the business. We were the original leaders of the business. And one of the things I noticed is that we didn't really have a name we could use. We were called Real Games, Real Arcade, Xylem, Attritiva. I mean, basically, some of these names sound like antidepressant medication. The jokes don't get any better than that. That was the last good joke. And so, I got one. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is, and I started thinking, I remember like starting at the company, there's all this data, all these fantastic ideas, but there was too many, and we didn't really have a rallying cry. And one of the things that we decided to do is say, what's special about what we can do? Well, I think we sat down for, 30 days and sat down with a branding agency and didn't hire like an agency that was going to charge us $3 million. We sat down with an agency that got what we were going to do. We sat down with a team that knows where we want to go. And we said, look, we're going to entertain and connect the world through personalized gaming experiences. But we got to freshen up our look, because we've seen this logo that looks like the Jack in the Box logo for about 10 years. And so what we did is actually got a refresh of the brand, and then started thinking about, okay, if that's where we want to go, start with the end in mind, what are the things we need to do to get there, right? So applying some of those principles earlier, we want to start by entertaining and connecting the world through personalized gaming experiences. That's the end. That's where we want to go. So we want to focus on building technology and services that connect everything from mobile, social, and download. And we want to get really good at social games. So we bought a company in Victoria called Backstage. We hired a lot of new people. We took existing folks who are fantastic art designers and producers, and really started building a competency there. We didn't try to do everything at once, and we made some really hard decisions as a company in order to cut costs and get focus. And not an easy decision. But we come out the other end of it feeling less like a NASCAR with lots of logos on it, and more around a rallying cry, what we want to do. And so I'm not saying that we're past this journey. We're very early in this journey. And I think it's super exciting to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur? Is that a word? An entrepreneur in a public company. We're running a games business of $100 million plus inside another public company. It's like one of those Russian dolls. Okay? It's kind of weird. I've done this before. I ran a big corporate travel games business inside Expedia that was $1 billion. And then I never got any respect because everyone else made $13 billion. So I was always Rodney Dangerfield in other businesses. Now I'm the Russian doll, so I think that's a little bit better. So the Russian doll side of me is, okay, now that we're through this journey of what we want to do, what are the proof points? And really, one of the things that we've focused on, and we made a big bet, you have to basically sit down with a board and say, look, I get that we're a public company. I get we have quarterly revenues. But trust me, it's all going to be fine. You ever see Shakespeare in Love and Jeffrey Rush's character is like, I don't know how it's going to happen. It's going to be fine. It's a miracle. I don't know how it's going to work. That's what you have to do sometimes. And you have to deliver on the end and then have a process to show execution. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do is actually connect our mobile, social, and download games together. And one of the things we just launched on Friday was a re-envisioned version of GameHouse.com that we'll start rolling out to all of our games. We have a 3,000 plus catalog for GameHouse. We have over 75 games in Android and iPad and iOS. And we have about 15 games in social. Why aren't these games talking to each other? Why can't you have leaderboards, virtual goods, activity, things like that, and badges, transparent and flowing back and forth? And so one of the things that we did, again, not touchdown right away. Life is never about launching something and then millions of people come. I've only had that happen once in my life. And that was with the Real Player in 1996. And I introduced something called Real Player Plus, and then I kind of hid the link. And I built a $40, $50 million business in 1 year because I was hiding a link to download a piece of software. It's a true story. Gamehouse today is actually starting to look like a social network. So we're taking the same platform we build our social games and applying it to GameHouse.com. So I encourage you to check it out. But again, applying the same 3 principles that I talked about before, showing proof, building a team, getting a process, and getting execution around that. Now we're going to start iterating on that and testing it, just like a startup does. The next thing we want to do is get really good at social games. And I would say we've done a reasonably good job today, but there's a lot of things that we can do better. And a couple things we wanted to do. One is build analytics, build a great team, and build a great process for rolling out games. And I think some of the things that we just started launching, like Collapse Blast, that you can check out and hopefully enjoy, and a number of other games that we'll be launching through the back half of the year will be really exciting. Again, people, process, and execution, super, super important. So in conclusion, again, there's going to be a fantastic giveaway, and there's going to be a special prize in just a second. You really need to focus, I believe, on these 3 things. Whether it's big or small, I think it's really important to actually have an operating mindset where you don't operate in fear. And I would encourage you to read books like The Inside Game of Tennis if you want to understand a little bit about how you can turn off your id to your superego. How do you get more peacefulness when you're looking at data? How do you not choke in your operating plan? 2 is don't forget that the people and the process and the execution matter. If you don't remember that, just remember the Bull Durham reference. Super important. Start out with a great team, and great things can happen. It's always harder to find great people than coming up with a great idea. Don't try to solve an industry problem. Try to get the great team first that knows how to build great product or great games. And then start with the end in mind. No matter what, never stop. I've raised over $100 million of venture capital, and I've been told no about 600 times. I've been told yes 3 times when I've been raising money for startups. Some of the references like Pandora, I think there's a famous quote that the CEO of Pandora said they had no 300 times. And what you basically have to do is be Teflon, because you know what you want to do. You've already built the great team, the great processes, and just don't stop. Don't listen to the naysayers and let it roll off. You'd never internalize that. And so with that, I have 3 questions for you, and there will be prizes. And then everyone at the end of the day will get a fantastic bottle opener that acts as a martial art weapon. It's not quite. It's pretty scary, though. So what year was Abraham Lincoln elected president?
1861.
Someone was, this gentleman, I think. Here we go. It helps if you kind of really go for it. What were the 3 companies I highlighted first in my speech? I think he completed it. I think he did have a wisdom of crowds thing. All right. All right, I'm going to go for it. Oh, sorry, Dave. Oh, there we go. And then this is just for the ladies. This is a lady's shirt. Love the ladies. This is for ladies. Please edit that out. I don't want my wife seeing that. She would not appreciate that.
That's going to be the soundbite.
Yeah, that's bad. What's the new social game that Gamehouse just launched?
She works on it.
Oh, come on, stop it. Someone who doesn't work on it. So she works on Collapse Blast. All right, you got it. All right. I'll open up for more questions. I don't know how much time we have, David.
We have half an hour.
No, we do?
Yeah.
Oh, I was fast. Could be some questions, maybe not half an hour's worth, and then we'll answer them. And then you have some great bottle openers that crack open and good beers tonight, sponsored by PopCap or Wild Tangent or whoever. Any questions?
I have a question about when you know it's time to change. How do you as a startup understand how radical a change is necessary to shift direction and turn your team to a different direction?
That's a great question. So just to reiterate, when do you know how to change? Basically, I'd say for a big or small company, when all of a sudden, for a big company where all of a sudden the KPIs you've been looking at, whether it's downloads, whether it's conversion, whatever the metrics you're looking at, all of a sudden go south very rapidly or start to go south. And your supply chain starts telling you that there's problems. Like the people you rely on start having problems. On the startup side, if your underlying launch KPIs, again, all about KPIs, go awry. Like all of a sudden, you launch a product, you have 10 people using it instead of 1,000, and it's really hard to get the next 10, you know you have a problem. I think it starts with the financial model and then an assessment with the team. I think with investments for startups, I always like to see really good teams going after a really big problem. So even if they get 1% market share, it's a big business. And then they know how to execute. And I think I've looked at investments before where you see that early KPI problem where it's really, really hard to get the next consumer. And then you have to ask yourself, did I make the wrong assumption? And that's always the toughest. No question?
I apologize, I'm watching a few minutes late, so if you
No
touch on
worries.
this.
You still get the bottle opener.
Okay. Your redesign was a fairly drastic change from what you had previously. Was there any part of the process when you got on the back end of that surprised you from the standpoint of customers not enjoying the new interface, the SEO impact, any of that kind of stuff that
We've had some information. Okay. Yeah, actually, it'll come up in our earnings call that you haven't seen yet. We actually had some SEO issues related to it, pretty big ones, and it was a technology screw up, and that was the biggest surprise for us. But we corrected it, and now we have a best practice to stop that. But I look at these things. Obviously, we're in a public company, so public mistakes are unfortunate. I won't get into the specifics, but it's been corrected. On the consumer side, I think people have been surprised that we did something. I mean, when I got to the company, there was 3 or 4 years of, and people in the audience may know, some of the tech guys will probably wince when I say this, but like a lot of platform migrations, but no forward motion on innovation. I think now that we're starting to innovate, consumers have been quite surprised. So I think of all the people that are going in through our flow through our news site, 100% have been, 98.87% have been successful, and we haven't had anyone say, what the hell are coins and rewards? I mean, basically introduced a concept where the more you play, the more you win, and you can redeem points for things like Amazon gift cards. And the reaction of the consumers has been, give me more of that stuff. I want an offer wall. It's been more positive than not. But there was a lot of fear going into it. People were concerned that we hadn't touched the site for quite a long time. It's a good question. Any other questions? Sir?
So with the new direction, how are you marketing the site?
Yeah, so I actually fundamentally believe, and there's and anyone that does a Google spend or affiliate spend will probably not like what I'm going to say, is I don't like paying for traffic. One of my business mentors who's hired me twice, Rich Barton, who's chairman of Zillow, always rails on me. I still talk to him about this. Don't pay for traffic. And so in essence, what we're going to do is we're still going to pay for some traffic, but we want to turn that site into a viral engagement piece. So, for example, on our Gamehouse site today, we're posting to Facebook all the time on achievements. And we'll start adding in a lot of viral acquisition techniques, not unlike what some of the examples you saw earlier in the deck, that we want to use the site and our users as means to get people engaged. Basically, if I'm going to pay somebody money, whether it's Google or an affiliate, I'd rather pay my consumers that money for bringing consumers in, is kind of the concept. In addition to that, we're going to start putting more social games inside Gamehouse and a broader catalog, so there'll be an SEO impact for that. I want you to go to the site and enjoy everything casual, regardless of the platform. So I think there'll be an SEO impact as well, positively. But I certainly don't want to increase the spend. David?
Social games coming from?
We're making those. So basically we have 2 studios in Seattle and Victoria building, let's call them 5 or 6 games a year coming out of our group. And then we have a group, a technology group that's building the things like the analytics to support those efforts. So all in-house. And a lot of new faces in the group. So it's interesting who likes to build games as a service versus games as a product. A lot of new faces. Dean?
How do you look at the problem of Zynga so big it's impossible to catch?
A little bit like the 1912 Patent Office. Dean up here was asking the question, Zynga's so big, paraphrase, Zynga's so big, how are you going to compete? I answer it with this is, we're not going to compete with Zynga, obviously. They have a style of game that we're not particularly good at. We have 10 years of a catalog that's just got all of a sudden very, very interesting for people that haven't been in our space like Wooga. If you look at Wooga, they basically have games that we've built for years like Collapse and Diamond Detective that are doing quite well. Even things like slots that we've done traditionally in Gamehouse for years are killing it. When I saw Sean's presentation, Sean Ryan from Facebook, he was talking about Slotomania. Well, we have a couple of slots games as well. So I would say that the DAU growth in our categories of traditional casual games, games that Wooga make and PopCap are actually some of the fastest growing and more interesting right now. But I'm most certainly not going to be a pundit and say, Zynga, I'm coming for you. But I do think there's ways that we can play multi-channel that are different than what those folks are doing. And I think it's a different business. And my hat's off to them. Any other questions? Sir?
Just on the monetization, how are you handling the traditional pay-to-play model versus new pay-as-you-play or freemium models within Gamehouse.com?
Yeah, it's a good question because, again, this is another fear. Stepping out of it like I don't actually run the business for a second. If I was an analyst looking at my business, 95% of our business is on retail and subscriptions, about. Less on microtransactions and advertising. That's not necessarily right, but it gives you a scope. And what we're doing is embracing it. So not unlike what the Asian companies for years have done, like Tencent, where they have a kind of a healthy view of free-to-play in the conversion funnel, whereas we used to shove people right to subscription, we recognize right now across multi-channel there's lots of ways for people to play. And we're definitely embracing more free-to-play gaming. And so we'll be introducing microtransactions on Gamehouse in the very near term. We'll also be doing a lot more aggressive free-to-play testing, even with our traditional business. We think there's a lot of opportunities to take our core game assets and then do a freemium model on them. But again, it's the level of, it's a life cycle management approach that we're going to take, not unlike how the traditional studios have looked at things where we'll probably introduce a game like Mortimer Beckett, Hidden Object. We're not going to offer that for free, but maybe we do something interesting 6 months after the fact. So we'll be looking at those types of models, but the fastest growing models for us are definitely microtransactions based, and so we're doing a lot of work around that, even on our .com portal. And the industry last point is, the last research report I saw from Think Equity showed that while the console market isn't dying, it'll be about $20 billion, and microtransactions worldwide will be around $20 billion. So I think everyone would be foolish here to assume that that's not going to happen, even cross-platform. So we're embracing that very, very quickly. We have some news to announce on that very soon, but I won't leak it here. With a big partner.
Oh, come on.
Or 2. Yeah, 2 big partners. One on Friday and then one soon. And the guy that did the deal's flagging me down, doesn't want me to leak. Any other questions? You really want to see this bottle opener. It's cool. And there's 2 folks in the back as you leave that will give those out to you. And I sincerely appreciate the questions and the attentiveness. Thank you very much.